Good evening, everyone. It's 5:31. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I think everyone's here. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag and our acknowledgement of tribal land. Thank you very much. Next, we have the approval of the agenda. Superintendent, do we need to make any changes?
Board President Bozay, I would ask to move item C from action to follow the union update.
All right, that seems reasonable. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda with that change?
So moved.
I'll second. Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've approved the agenda with that change. And next is introduction of the interpreter.
Para asistencia de traducción en español, la señora Rivera te ayudará.
Moving right along, we have public forum.
Thank you, President Bozay. With us tonight, taking us through public forum, is our Public Information Officer, Mr. Cody Donarski.
Good evening, Board President, members of the Board, Superintendent Chavez. There is one public forum comment tonight, and it is via email, so I will be reading it. Public forum includes online and/or virtual participation as needed, as well as in-person comments when the board holds in-person meetings. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. There will be no sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I will give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue are allowed only during public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it is on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. Please do not discuss employee matters which may result in disciplinary action. Instead, notify the employee supervisor, the Human Resources Department, or the superintendent. The comment tonight is from Jolene Vasquez. Thank you for allowing me to address the board. I am concerned for the well-being of students at the Academy for Technology and the Classics as a parent, but also with knowledge of an educator, school counselor, and clinical mental health professional. Currently, there is no oversight of this school per the New Mexico Charter School Division and the Santa Fe Public Schools. From what I have been told by both entities, it is neither of them that are in charge of the school or are in charge of making the school accountable for their actions or lack thereof. I've been trying to work through issues with the school for the past 4 years. I have proof of inappropriate actions and lack of support from the principal. Santa Fe Public Schools is listed as ATC's authorizer on the New Mexico Public Education website, but does not have oversight over the charter school. This makes it super easy for the administration to do what they like when they like without repercussions. ATC has a board, but the volunteer president has made it clear in my attempts to get his support in addressing some issues that the principal is the only one that has authority to address school complaints or academic support needed. needed. Because of this, there is a lack of support from the principal and other administrators when it comes to following through with the handbook and policies they put in place, when it comes to reporting abuse, following through with the code of conduct for athletes and teachers, and putting fair grades in a timely manner, supporting school, athletes, and all students. ATC has not been able to provide current reading and math levels of proficiency or feedback on students that are struggling, that are not advanced. The administration will deny this and use blanket statements and remind application messages to say that they are doing their part. Not all teachers are consistently using all tools provided to students, such as Canvas, for accountability. Most importantly, administration was recently made aware of sexual, verbal, and physical abuse. Verbal sexual abuse was reported to administration by young girls from ATC by boys from the basketball team. But according to a basketball player that confided in myself and my husband about it, the athletic director decided that because ATC was going to state championships, that they were not going to punish or stop competitions and allow ATC boys basketball to still compete, because it was good recognition for the school. In my opinion, these girls were victimized all over again, seeing these boys in the paper and giving them praise while they had displayed misconduct that should not have been allowed them to move forward in state competitions. Parents got a message on February 2nd, 2023, saying, on Monday, February 6th, we are hosting a series of small group discussions beginning with our female students about issues that are interfering with learning and safety, etc. This was an effort to support the girls, but did it teach the boys anything? It was wrong, and they should not have been allowed to keep playing basketball, which they were. It was proven to be true, and therefore they had group sessions. The same for the sexual assault that was reported by the same student was dismissed, and they all went to state like nothing happened. The main perpetrator didn't play, but the other two involved played. The coach told them not to speak to the media or other comments, but as the school behavior was overlooked, and in a meeting for parents with the principal and superintendent for Santa Fe Public Schools, some parents tried to get the decision for the main perpetrator overturned so he could play. So that concludes 3 minutes. I will forward the remainder of the message to the board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Donarski. Is there anyone else present in the audience who would like to speak at public forum that did not sign up? Okay. We will move on to the union update. I don't see anyone here from the union tonight. So that goes to our item C, acceptance of fiscal year 2022 financial audit.
Thank you, Board President Bozay. With us tonight are our CFO, Mr. Robert Martinez, and also our auditor, Ms. Audrey Jaramillo from the JAG Group. Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. As Superintendent Chavez mentioned, we have Audrey Jaramillo with us from Jaramillo Accounting Group to go over the FY22 audit for acceptance by the board.
Okay. All right. Good evening. Madam Chair, members of the board, and Superintendent, it's great to be here to present the results of the June 30, 2022 audit. On the screen here, we have the PDF of the entire released audit packet that the state auditor has reviewed and put their stamp of approval on, so to speak. And not too many changes have occurred from the prior year as far as format and everything of the financial statements. We still have the 3 concurring audits that happen at the same time, which is your financial statement audit, your federal funds audit, and then the state compliance piece of it, which we test concurrently with the other 2 audit areas. And so things like the Public Monies Act, et cetera, we take a look at those, travel and per diem and other areas of state compliance. The table of contents from here, you can see there are many, many, many schedules. What you pay us for is our audit opinion, and I guess we could flip to that page. Let's see here if I can find the page number for us. Should be page 1 on there. There we go. The format of the independent auditor's report did change just a little bit in our auditing standards from the prior year. So up front, it right away gives our audit opinion, the basis of our opinions, the responsibilities of management. On the next page, it continues the responsibilities of the auditor, of course, which we have many as well, and the required supplementary information. On page 3, the supplementary information, a lot of standard language in this opinion, and then just point out that we do audit in accordance with government auditing standards, seeing that the district is a governmental entity. Overall, so this is your overall audit opinion on the financial statements. You have a clean, unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that an auditor can give. So great work on that. And then following, we have the basic financial statements. And I won't go over everything, but I will, of course, at the end here stand for questions from the board. And if there are schedules that you would like me to go over or footnotes, I'm happy to do that. These first schedules in the front are what are called government-wide financials, and they show the district in the left-hand column, and then ATC, the component unit, in the right-hand column. And this first page here is a statement of net position, otherwise known in normal world as a balance sheet. So it has your assets and liabilities and equity, essentially. You'll see on there large amounts accrued in liabilities for the pension, for example, payables, your cash, restricted cash, inventory, receivables, etc. On page 5, we have the overall statement of activities, which is similar to an income statement. Up at the top, we have the program revenues and expenditures. And then down toward the bottom right there, we have the general revenues such as property taxes. It shows your SEG for the district was $115.6 million. For ATC, it was $3.6 million. So kind of gives you an idea of the different levels of funding and expenditure from an overall district perspective. The schedules after this go into more detail by fund, and I don't think that's something that we need to get into here tonight, but I would say from management and board member perspective, these financials really do have great information. If you're curious about any funding source of the district or how the money is being spent in any different fund, these things really do show a lot of detail, and it's all broken out by the different aspects of the district's operations.
Excuse me for jumping in quickly, Ms. Jaramillo. I'm not sure who has control of the screen there. Is it possible to zoom in a little bit? None of us can see anything that's on the screen. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, so here, let's see, we have, yeah, we were here. That's correct. And this was jumping into the individual funds. So if you could scroll down to the next page, I can show them. You know, these columns on each of these pages show, you know, debt service, capital projects, other governmental funds, special revenue funds. And throughout the report, there are just many, many schedules of all of these different funds. And so we know the district has really a huge operation, right? You have general revenues of, just the general revenues of $181 million. So overall revenue to the district is much higher than that. So there's a lot to handle. And a lot of these numbers, management does check them all. Of course, they're tracking them all throughout the year, and everything gets adjusted and audited at the end of the year. So we can probably skip ahead. Sorry, I'm over a cold, but it's still lingering with me just a tad bit here. The footnotes start on page 18 of the document. And I just wanted to point this out because this is where it starts. It starts off by going over your accounting policies, and then you can scroll down a little bit, and we'll give a couple examples here. Let's see. Your policies go on for quite a while. They haven't changed too much in the past year, so they're going to be the typical policies that you see on page 29 of the document. Here's an example of a footnote on cash where it goes over a little more detail than what was in the front schedule. So you can think of the footnotes as telling a little bit more of the story of the numbers and then breaking down more detail of the numbers that were in the front. And so this, for example, is on cash, and you can see a lot of where does the district hold its cash, how much is covered by insurance and collateral, how much is not. And I would say that that's something to keep an eye on this year as the banks kind of struggle to have enough collateral. CFO and I can have an offline conversation about that, but State Auditor's Office also is giving warnings out about pledged collateral this year. So yeah, the footnotes have, like I said, just a lot of information. And they present everything on ATC as well, on the component unit charter. And so we're gonna skip way to the back to page 150 of the document. On page 150 of the document, it'll come here in a moment, but this is our independent auditor's report on internal controls. And for this is just a general report that doesn't give you an opinion on the effectiveness of your internal controls, but if we see anything, we have to point them out in the form of findings. And so that's basically what this is telling you. And then on page 152, our third and last report from JAG in the packet here is an opinion on your major federal programs. And this used to be called your A133 audit, your single audit. It's now called a Uniform Grant Guidance Audit, UGG audit. And this is over your federal funds, like I said, and you have a clean opinion on this one as well. Page 155 goes over all of your federal awards. So if you're ever curious about how much we receive here in the district for federal funds, it's all listed out here by individual CFDA number and the grants and where it's passed through. Like you can see, passed through State of New Mexico PED for $17.5 million as one example. And on the next page, in total, you can see the district receives 23.3 approximately in federal awards. Page 158 of the document here shows our prior year findings and then the progress on those. And they were modified because progress was made in most cases, but repeated, and then the component unit as well. And on page 159, this is an overview of the audit. Again, your unmodified or clean opinions, a couple of findings, material weakness, significant deficiencies noted. Nothing on the federal awards though, which is great. It does show the two IDEA B and Education Stabilization Fund that was audited as major programs. And then you can move forward to the next page, and this starts the actual detail on the findings themselves. So on this first finding relates to financial close and reporting, and this is something the district has been working toward for many years and making progress in. There have been findings in the past and now on cash. And so you can see the details here, and I won't go into them. But overall, I would say there needs to be a pretty heavy focus on cash management. And we have gone over this in the audit committee meetings extensively. And I believe they have brought these as well to the attention of the board. And I know for sure the CFO has, and had discussions with the superintendent and the board members as well. But cash continues to be a struggle for the district, and cash management is very, very critical. I would say critically low balances of cash for the district. And there have been instances in the past where there's, been overdrafts or borrowing of funds, like in the previous year, and something that is an issue, I would say, at the state level for many reasons. Reimbursements not being provided to the district on time, SEG not being transferred timely, a number of things related to benefits for employees, for example. And so overall, I would just say in leadership, this needs to raise to the highest level of awareness for the district as far as cash balances. And next, we have negative cash balances in activity funds. This is actually more of a common finding where activity funds sometimes go a little bit negative, and the management has definitely been working on eliminating those negative balances and reducing the number of activity funds each year. So there's been a lot of progress on that part over the years. Budgetary conditions, this is also another very common finding for districts. I mean, imagine out of, the hundreds of millions that you all bring in, you have to get your budget exactly right at June 30. And if you go over in any one function line, even just by a little bit, it becomes an audit finding for state compliance. So very common. That's something just to keep an eye on for June. And I think that if the board is willing to have a special meeting before the deadline for bars, if necessary, then that would be helpful to clear up anything that management needs to adjust right before the deadline on budget. So wouldn't you say that's, and what is the actual deadline again on bars?
Well, it depends on the fund, but some of these funds, we actually tried to over budget to avoid this issue, and the bars were not approved at the PED level. But these are things that we've worked on with other districts and also the PED, and we can communicate those deadlines to the board on if a special meeting would need to be had in order to prevent this finding.
Okay, so just kind of looking ahead to May, June timeframe. Robert, was there anything else on the other findings you wanted to address, to clarify for the board at all? The next page just goes over our exit conference and the attendees, and that concludes the report. So be happy to answer any questions or go into anything else in more detail.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jaramillo. Any questions from the board? Yes, Vice President Anderson.
I am not sure of the standard practice of this, but this is the first I'm seeing of the audit, and I haven't had time to read it, and I don't have a copy of it. So I'm a little concerned about approving something that I haven't been able to read. Is that typical? Is any? Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah, the audit committee, this has ultimately been worked through, and it is important to know we don't approve the audit, we accept it.
Got it.
Having said that, the board should get to see the audit.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really helpful.
Just a comment, if I may. I don't think there's anything wrong with, adding it to the next agenda for acceptance after you've had a chance to review it, since it is an oversight responsibility of the board. So, good point.
Thank you. I think that would be agreeable to the whole board, to push the acceptance off till the next meeting. Are there other questions you would like to ask, Vice President Anderson?
No, I think that was really helpful. Thank you for going over the findings. That was great. And that was my major question at the beginning of the presentation, so I appreciated being answered during that. And I don't mean to throw any problems, but I just wanted to make sure we were doing our
No
due
problem at all.
diligence. Okay.
Yes, Dr. Gonzalez.
Madam President, members of the board, I agree with you entirely. I would really like to see that. It was kind of a quick thing, and for most of it, I couldn't even
See the numbers.
So I would really like to see it before I move acceptance of it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
I just want to say thank you to JAG and the finance team. It's been a lot of work, and the audit committee, crucially, because it's a lot of work, and honestly, I think we should all see it. I want to look at it again, and then we can do our due diligence and accept the audit, but really appreciate the hard work of the finance team and JAG.
Sure, thank you. And I do want to point out, too, that over the past 5 years, the district really has made a lot of progress. I mean, a lot. The audit committee and the administration, Robert has worked really hard to clear findings and keep the audit committee updated. We are in contact, I don't know, it seems like, yeah, weekly. And so just being able to answer questions back and forth and address issues, I think that he's done a fantastic job. And I've really seen, first, the charter clear a lot of their problems and findings and processes and issues, and the district now over this time period as well, getting through findings, making them process improvements. And despite all the struggles you have with, it's hard to retain people and recruit people into the accounting field right now. It's very, very difficult and competitive with people leaving New Mexico, et cetera. So I feel like big picture, there's certainly been a lot of progress made, and I'll just end on the note for progress to really take a very hard look at cash balances and management. So,
Thank you very much.
all right.
It's timely as we're working on our budget and have been talking about cash balance and how important it is. So cheers to continuing to improve every year.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
All right, back to our regularly scheduled programming here. Board announcements and follow-up. Yes, Dr. Gonzalez.
Well, I just thought I would announce that I'm going to run for reelection in November. So,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Me too.
Good. How about you?
Me three.
Here we are.
Congratulations.
Very good. It's a great board, and I would love to see us all come back because we work well together and we've done some really good things. And so I'm excited to be running again.
Yes. When we were at that education roundtable on Friday morning, Dr. Gonzalez and I were talking about the learning loss that the board members had from walking onto the board in 2020 and the impact that COVID had on our ability to kind of get our footing. And now we're out in schools again, and it's a lot to learn. And I think it takes, 2 years just to start to get a sense of it. And now I feel like we have really good momentum and we're working well together. And I think we're bringing some incredible change to the district. And I would love to see it continue. And there's nobody better to do it than those of us sitting up here. So cheers to that. Any other announcements? None will be as exciting as that. I assume the superintendent will talk about our exciting visit from the Deputy Secretary of Education last week. That was definitely a highlight for me. And I don't think I have any other announcements. So we'll move on to you.
Thank you, Board President Bozé, members of the board, those in the audience. Again, that's exactly where I'm going to start with, a successful visit by the U.S. Education Deputy Secretary Cindy Martin. It was last week on Thursday and Friday, April 20th and 21st. We welcomed the Deputy Secretary to Ramirez Thomas Elementary and Capitol High School. Both visits went very well. It's really to help them raise the initiative and push it forward. It's called Raise the Bar and Lead the World. Santa Fe Public Schools is one of 8 districts throughout the U.S. that were identified as a partner to really push this initiative forward. Again, it's a call to action to transform public school education, K through 12, and unite around what truly works. And we were a district that they wanted to highlight. They really started to dig deep into the innovation, into how we're addressing not only student need, but also needs of our employees, and really wanted to put a spotlight on it. At Ramirez Thomas, they got to take a look at standards-based instruction and grading, wellness rooms, the child care center. When we transitioned over to Capitol, it was really about instruction, about career pathways, about our work-based learning internship program. Very impressed. They were very impressed and thought we were making wise decisions on the use of ESSER. I did make a comment to them because they said there are states and districts around the U.S. that have large balances, and I said, please ship the balances our way. So again, very successful. I want to thank the team for putting that on. And on Friday, we had a discussion or a roundtable with the Deputy Secretary, also our own PED Secretary, as well as educational leaders from around the state, really talking about the highlights of their visit. The spotlight was really bright on Santa Fe Public Schools, but it really led us into an area that others in the room got to see. We got to hear from them. So it was very rich discussion. So again, want to just say thank you to everyone who helped put that visit together. Really, really well received by the U.S. Department of Ed. Moving on, we want to congratulate our 22-23 retirees and tell them job well done. I've told them I always try to recruit them back. However, if they have the opportunity to retire, congratulations to them. We will have 28 at this point in time. We could receive many more, but 28 retirees. We will wish them well Friday, May 5th at a retirement dinner. I hope you guys received the invite. And again, we want to make sure that we really shine the light on them now for the services to Santa Fe Public Schools and education in general. I'll quickly read through the names of those who are retiring. Christine Barry from Carlos Gilbert Elementary, Robin Caldwell from Santa Fe High, Edward Carrillo from Transportation, Barbara Coate from Capitol, Carmela Cordova from Acequia Madre, John Dotz from Santa Fe High, Helen Duran from El Camino, Tamara Fellows from Nino Otero, Roger Ferguson from our special ed department, Cynthia Fullreader from Aspen, Shalina Gonzalez from Amy Bill, Ruth Gradinsky from our special ed department, district department, Diane Hastings from Milagro Middle School, and I don't know if you guys knew of this one, but this may be a little bit of a shock to you guys, Anita Het, our lead nurse. Yes, I figured. She did, and everybody did a great job, but man, was she so pivotal during the pandemic. I worked with her, I think, almost every day, and I was not in this position at that time. Ramona Hildenbrandt from Tesuque Elementary, Joanne Jameson from Carlos Gilbert, Dorothy McLaughlin from Carlos Gilbert, John McMahon from Cesar Chavez, Randy Mondragon from Transportation, Gail Mullins from NIE, Michael Nava from El Camino, Deborah or Debbie Park from Ortiz. If you remember our video on standards-based grading, she was part of it. Lisa Randall from Facilities and Maintenance, another one. Yes. Christina Romero from our Technology Department, Nora Solano from Santa Fe High, Roberta Roybal from Santa Fe High, Dr. Suchint Sarangarm from Assessment, and William Wass from Capitol High. So again, we want to wish them well. We'll celebrate them on May 5th, and again, we'll try to recruit them back if they're willing to sit out 90 days. Moving on. Oh, did you want to
never
go ahead? Yeah, go ahead.
You can hop in, Dr. Gonzalez.
No, I just wondered, is that number typical of every year?
It is. It's a little low at this point, which is good. But still, people are making decisions. They're still submitting their paperwork, so we still have a few weeks as we move through till we get to May 5th. We've had some in the past that have come in after May 5th during that celebration as well. Tara Hughes, if you remember Tara Hughes, she was the Teacher of the Year for the state of New Mexico. At NIE, she has made the top 10 as far as finalists for National Teacher of the Year. She was in Washington, D.C. She got to meet with Secretary Cardona and the First Lady. And she wrote to me to say how honored and humbled she is to carry the Santa Fe Public Schools name and family and all the students on this journey. So again, we want to make sure we wish her well and all the luck and make sure to continue to support her on this journey. El Camino Real Academy pre-K teacher Jen Anderson has been awarded the National Geographic Society of Grosvenor Fellowship to participate in a National Geographic educational expedition. I've asked her if I could go to the Galapagos Islands this summer. She is one of 50 highly respected educators selected as fellows. Again, we are super excited for Jen and look forward to seeing how her experience will be shared with her pre-K students next year at El Camino. May 2nd, Teacher Appreciation Day. We will be delivering a small gift. I'm not going to say what it is in case they're listening. But again, we want to recognize our teachers on May 2nd and deliver them a little gift and tell them that they are appreciated and we thank them for all that they do. And then just a quick reminder, May 11th, our next board meeting, that will be the last board meeting with our student board members. So we want to make sure that we acknowledge them and we recognize them. All right, that concludes my superintendent's announcements.
Thank you very much. Any questions on any of those announcements? Yes, Vice President Anderson.
Thank you. I wonder if maybe a couple of board members could get together to talk about what to do to honor our student board members for having been here. I don't know if anyone wants to do that, but
That seems lovely.
yeah. Do you want to work with me and we'll figure something out? Okay, cool. I think it would be great to honor them. And then I just wanted to say, I read, I think it was on the SFPS Facebook page, Terry Hughes' comments that she made, and they were really lovely. So there's lots of good content on the SFPS Facebook page, but I would recommend seeking out that post because they were really fantastic.
Yes, very much so. All right, on to our budget presentation for this evening.
Thank you, Board President Bozay, members of the board. Again, we are coming forward with a presentation. Again, it's really based off of the previous two meetings. This presentation tonight will be around answering questions, providing a little more clarification, and also moving forward on the last slide, or second to the last slide, an updated timeline. And just to lead into this, we still have not received award letters, our 910B5, which really does solidify what we would receive through the SEG. So again, this is a framework. I don't want to bring a budget to you guys for approval without some of that missing information. I think that would be premature of us, just in case things change. Last year, for example, the SEG, remind me if I'm incorrect, Mr. Martinez, we had to resubmit it 2 different times for incorrect information on it. So I want to make sure that we have our information that is correct. But again, this is to walk us through, answer some additional questions. When we ended last week, we had about a $9 million delta or deficit. And again, we've looked at it, scrubbed some numbers, as a board member Noble mentioned. The more we work on this, the tighter the math becomes. And so again, as we move through this presentation, you'll see that the deficit or delta did reduce quite a bit. Mr. Martinez?
Thank you, Superintendent Chavez, Madam President, members of the board. We'll move through the presentation. Oh, I forgot, I'm in control. From the April 20th, 2023 board meeting, or was a study session. There were concerns from the board about the projected deficit, the projected enrollment, and how the numbers shake out, class sizes, debt services, reserve explanation, and scenarios of impacts from employees, benefits, options. So we'll review those concerns throughout the presentation. The projected deficit, as Superintendent Chavez mentioned, of 9 to 13 million, dependent on which plan we move towards, has been reduced by the following. The tiers of the 60-40, 70-30, 80-20 budget option is balanced with an additional cash budgeted of 1.1 million. The 74-26 budget option still has a deficit of 1.958 million. There are 23 vacant positions that have been filled by displaced teachers, which allowed the district to save 1.756 million. Right-sizing the district continues based on enrollment patterns and is a district-wide initiative including schools and departments. The benefits that were originally projected at 42% are at 38% per recommendations from NMSIA and NMPED, which provided a savings of 3.482 million for the tier option and 4.432 million for the 74-26 budget option. I will say that those percentages were always budgeted at a little bit higher of a rate to allow some contingency and cushion within the budget. The reduction in FY24 departmental expenditures, which allowed the district to save 400,000. Budgeted cash decreased 1.6 million due to expected rollover. And in regards to that, if you remember from the non-negotiables, and we'll go through that later on in the presentation, we budgeted cash at 6.5 million, getting us to the 5% in alignment with board policy. We're expected for at least 1.6 million cash to roll over from FY23, the current fiscal year. So we're able to decrease the non-negotiable 6.5 million down 1.6 with the expectation that at least that amount will roll over and still put us in alignment with the 5% of board policy. Cost shifting, 1.5 million in recurring allocation. That is our ad valorem allocation that the district receive, and it is going to be recurring allocation, so we are able to do some cost shifting into that fund. Continuing on with enrollment, that drives our funding. Defining the difference between membership and FTE, 11,067 was reported last week as membership, and FTE is 10,968. So membership is the actual number of students enrolled, the ratio of 1 to 1. Full-time equivalency, which is what we define as FTE, is what is used in the funding formula. Preschool membership is also counted as half units, not as a full unit. 10,947 average FTE of the 80th and the 120th day for FY23. At our 80th day, our total FTE was 10,926, and at our 120th day, our total FTE was 10,968. And keep in mind that our funding is based on the average of the 80th and the 120th day. Other drivers are of the 910B5, which is a compilation of our SEG, is the bilingual program units, elementary fine arts units, which we know from previous presentations that that indicator went up a little bit. Elementary PE, special education, TCI, which the district saw an increase in TCI from last year's index to this year's index, and that is based on the staff and their experience and the years of experience, their education level, and also at risk, which rose, the index rose a little bit, and homeschool units. Reminding the board that the unit value for FY24 is 6,241.67, which was about a 13% increase from the final unit value of FY22. Sorry, FY23. Class sizes, reimagining steering committee to explore ongoing conversations with NEA Santa Fe. Growth in Santa Fe is occurring on the south side. Building square footage for newer schools on the south side is much higher than that for smaller buildings on the east side. The debt services reserve, which when you have an opportunity, when you're reviewing the financial audit, if you will look at the debt service, there's restricted cash, and that is exactly where that high balance of budget is with zero expenditures. So the definition of debt service funds is categorical funds used to pay principal and interest of GO or GO bond and ETN. And in simple terms, this is like an escrow account, that large amount with zero expenditures. So money is put in there throughout the year, and you only pay principal once a year and interest twice a year. So, but money continues to come in from taxes. That's what the voters vote on to approve the bonds. But it's a restricted cash account. So the zero under debt service reserve in the April 20th presentation reflects no expenditures because none are allowed under a cash report. As I mentioned from that meeting, if we needed to pay off debt that was outside of what the board approved for budget, it would be done in the form of a bar. You have to move money out of cash into an allowable expenditure under the chart of accounts to allow for an expenditure to take place. So that's what it is. It's a restricted cash account. And you'll see that under your review of the audit. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Howard to talk about the impacts of the benefits.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, good evening. My role here tonight is to shed a little bit more light on the things associated with insurance increases, the tier structure, employee raises, and how that all fits together. And before jumping into any of the details on the slide, and I realize there's a lot of numbers in front of you, I just want to point out that a lot of people before digging into it might say, well, our salaries are going up 6%, our insurance is going up 7.24%. Doesn't that mean I'm losing 1.24%? And the answer to that is no, not necessarily. The 6% increase is on a salary of $25,000, $50,000, $70,000. The 7.24% increase on benefits is on whatever of the 21 benefit packages the employee chooses. So the annual premium for an insurance program can be anywhere from $400 and some odd dollars to a little bit over $2,000. So it's 7% of that. So just want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples when we take a look at those numbers. So I'm going to use my pointer. I don't know if you want to follow along on the sheets in front of you or up on the screen overhead here. Going to take a look at 3 specific examples to try to get a handle of how those different variables play off of one another. So the first example up here, we're taking a look at an employee who chooses the Presbyterian low option for the employee only. The current monthly benefit for that package is $482 and change. We're currently paying approximately a 74% district contribution to that and a 26% employee contribution. And the reason I say approximately is that that is not exactly on the money for every employee. Employees who are making less than under 15,000, we're paying 75%. So that's kind of an overall district average when we talk about 76.24. So given that monthly premium of $482, the district's contribution on that would be $357, the employee's contribution $125 per month. That's the monthly premium. To the right of that $125.44, you'll see that the employee's per pay period contribution is a little bit over almost $63. Moving from 22-23 to the right for 23-24, we're seeing a 7.24% increase in the benefit, in the monthly premium, I should say. So that's $482 is going to become $517. And at this point, I think we could start moving a little bit more quickly through it because the pattern repeats itself. On that $517.39, the district contribution is roughly $382, employee contribution $134 per month. The per pay period amount for the employee, $67.26. If we compare that $67.26 per month next year compared to the $62.72 they're currently paying, we'll move out to the right-hand side here and see that's an increase per pay period of $4.54 multiplied by 24 pay periods per year for a total increase annually of $108.98. So that's the total increase to the insurance premium of the employee who selects the Presbyterian low employee-only package if we were to continue at that 74-26 ratio. Directly beneath that over on the right-hand side, we see the breakdown of what that cost would be for both the district and employee if we went with a 60-40 split, which we'll do for employees over 60,000 if we follow the legislation, for the 70-30 split for employees making between 50 and 60,000, and an 80-20 split for employees earning below 50,000. So I don't need to go through all the numbers. You could see over on the right-hand side of this little box what the per pay period cost is for the employees. So on that 60-40 split, per pay period would be $103 and change, compared to this year where they're paying $62 and change. So that's an increase of $40.76 per pay period, or $978 over the course of the 24 pay periods for the year. The math continues as we go down to the 70-30 options and the 80-20 options, and if you follow across to the right, you can see what the impact is. Annually for the 70-30 employee, and again, that's an employee making between 50 and 60,000, the annual increase will be $357. And for the employee who is going to have the district pick up 80% and they are only going to pay 20%, they are actually going to pay less next year if we go to that tiered structure. Per pay period, their savings will be $1098, or for the year, a savings of $263. One thing I want to point out before going to example 2 is this little box right here that shows how many people currently fall into each of those groups. So 684 of our 1,050 employees who are electing health benefits make over $60,000 a year. 132 fall in that 50 to 60,000 range, and the other 234 make under $50,000 per year. The plan I selected there for example 1 is our least expensive medical coverage program in the district. Example 2 shows the opposite extreme, the most expensive program. So I'll move through it more quickly since you see the pattern there. Monthly premium is a total right now of $2,185, with a 7.24% increase. It'll jump up to $2,343, and you can follow the math down. If we stick with the 74-26 employer split, the per pay period cost to the employee is $304 compared to the current $284, or annually almost $500, $493. On the 60-40, 70-30, 80-20 splits, especially on the 60-40 and 70-30, the cost to the employee is significantly higher. On the next slide, we'll take a look at what the salary increases are, so you'll have something to measure these increased employee costs against. So that's the example of the least expensive and most expensive medical coverage plans we have in the district. Example 3 is the one that is the most popular with our employees. 27% of our employees select example 3. It's Presbyterian high option coverage for the employee only. So their per pay period cost on that is $90.45. If we move across to what it would be next year if we continued 74-26, that $90.45 goes up to $97 even, increase of $655 per pay period, or $157 for the entire year. Under the 60-40, 70-30, 80-20 plans, you can see that again, 60-40 and 70-30, the cost will be a little bit higher for the employees. For the employees making under $50,000, the cost will actually be $380 less over the course of the year. Be happy to answer any questions you have on that. And again, these are 3 examples out of 21 options that the employees have. And then I would like to share the next slide, just to give an idea of what a 6% salary increase could mean for the employees. So if you look at the left-hand column, I selected a couple of representative groups. We have teachers level 1, 2, and 3, educational assistants, and then the last 2, instead of putting an exact job title there, I grouped them kind of in a salary classification. So that one above the bottom is a 10-month employee making $15 an hour, which is the minimum right now for all school employees, and working an 8-hour day. An example of that might be a school secretary at an elementary school. They work a 10-month calendar, which is 200 work days, 8 hours a day, $15 an hour is the minimum for a high school graduate, somebody with no college degree, credit hours. And the final one in that column, a 12-month employee, also with an 8-hour day, $15 an hour, could be a custodian or a mechanic helper. We'll talk about their salary increase. So going into the boxes here, under the 22-23 column, you'll see the three-tier teachers, 50,000, 60,000, 70. If we read across on the level 1 teacher, 6% salary increase for next year would bring that $50,000 employee to $53,000. After the vertical black bar in there, you'll see that it's broken up into the 5% and the 1% that the legislature offered when they broke up and presented these salary increases. So the 5% on the $50,000 is $2,500, the 1% is $500, for a total salary increase of $3,000. $3,600 for the level 2 teachers and $4,200 for level 3. I'd like to take a second to talk about educational assistants. You'll see that the 5% and 1% is not applicable because instead of calculating their salary next year on an hourly basis, as we have in the past, $15 an hour as a starting point, the legislation identified that a minimum salary for those employees would be $25,000 a year. So they're going from an annual salary of $18,900 to a minimum of $25,000, and the increase there is $6,100. On an hourly basis, if you broke that down, it comes to about $4.84 per hour, going from $15 to $19.84. So thankful to hear that the legislature is supporting our EAs in that way. That's awesome. And if we follow down on the final 2 lines there, the 10-month secretary example that I gave, you'll see the salary increase there will be $1,440, and custodian, mechanic helper type position, 12 months, minimum wage, 8 hours a day, increase would be $1,872. So there's an example of what salary increases look like for a variety of different employees. And on the previous slide, we took a look at what the benefit increase could be, whether we go 74-26 or do the tiered structure 60-40, 70-30, 80-20.
And Mr. Exner, I just want to add, if we look on page 8, that slide right there, and as you broke it out, the 5% and the 1%, if you look at the 1%, which was supposed to cover the increased cost of benefits, and you flip back over to the previous page, and you look at the 7.24 increase, it doesn't cover all plans. It covers some, does not cover all. So when you look at a teacher, level 3 teacher, that is making more than $60,000, and you see the increase is a annual increase of $4,000, that 1% does not cover. The 1% does cover our lowest paid employees and some of the plans that they may choose, but not all. So when we're looking at it, and I think that question was asked last week, will that 1% cover all plans? The answer is no. Will the 6% cover all plans and increases? And the answer is no. You look, if you flip back to page 8, the average increase, ranges between $3,000 and $4,200. Now, this is just kind of the average. We're not saying exact. And then you flip back to 7, you'll see a 60-40 split for Blue Cross Blue Shield. The annual increase is $4,400. So again, it all depends on where they fall, but it's very important for us to have this discussion with you guys so you can see the different options and why it's so important to balance this budget moving forward.
And Superintendent Chavez, if I could add one additional thing, regarding those salaries, to use the teachers as an example, those are the minimum salaries that are posted there. So a first-year teacher, bachelor's degree, no experience, will indeed start at $50,000 in the current year. However, level 2, $60,000 would be that rare case where somebody comes in, receives a level 2 license from PED, but is not able to produce the verification of years of experience. So they might start on level 0, but that's a very rare experience. In almost all cases, a level 2 teacher will have at least 3 years of experience, and a level 3 teacher will have at least 6 years of experience. So those are showing minimum salaries there.
And Mr. Exler, if you can quickly just talk about the increase to the teacher's contract versus the 5%.
Yes, thank you very much, Superintendent. Discussions about whether the 5% increase will cover the 2 additional days that teachers are working next year have been brought up. So currently, the teacher schedule is 180 days. So if we did the math on that and looked at each 180th being 1 day, it equals 0.55%, so less than 1%. If the school year was 100 days long, each day would be 1%. If the school year was 200 days long, each day would be a half of 1%. So 180 days is just a tiny bit over, it's 0.555. 2 days, therefore, is 1.1%. So they're working 1.11111% more days and receiving an increase in salary of 5%.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
Thank you so much, President Bose, members of the board, and Superintendent Chavez. Does that hold true for instructional hours as well? I know we're increasing the number of minutes per day. So are they, I know we're only increasing by 2 days, but it seems like we're increasing by more days when we're increasing the instructional minutes.
We took a, Vice President Anderson, we did take a look at that, and the moving parts were even a little bit more complex than the salary schedules. Currently, teacher workdays are 6 hours, 45 minutes for elementary, 7 hours for secondary. Next year, because of the increased minutes, it's going to be 7 hours for elementary, 7 hours and 5 minutes for middle, and 7 hours and 10 minutes for high school. So with all those, and Deputy Superintendent Romero is identifying that that doesn't exclude the 30-minute. It excludes the 30-minute lunch period. Yeah.
It did. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't acknowledge that it did. It did. Thank you so much.
Any other questions on this insurance information before we move on? Yes.
This is just a comment. I know the most important thing that we do is balance the budget. I just do want to express some concern that we will have teachers taking home less money if they have a higher cost insurance plan. And in my anecdotal experience, typically people who have higher cost insurance plans have them because they have complex medical needs. And I say that as a person with complex medical needs. So I am, you know, I think the fact that we've been doing 7426 is amazing. I know that that doesn't balance the budget. I understand that, you know, choosing this plan is a choice. But I am concerned for those level 2 teachers. And I know you're saying that that's not common, that they come in with 0 years of experience. But I'm wondering if even if they come in with a few more years of experience, if their 6% raise is going to cover it. And it's not. And I just feel bad as a person sending our teachers home with less money next year. Well, even though it's a small amount more, sending them home with less money for more work.
Well, if I could just add, I just want to mention that there's been no decision on which option, 7426 or the tiered. If it's the will of the board and we pick 7426, there will not be less take-home pay for anybody in the district. So again, we have to continue to work and scrub that budget, wait for more information to come from PED to make up that remaining $1.9 million deficit. So you have the option of which one to choose.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. And I do want to acknowledge that if that happens, it's on the board and not on the staff. So we understand that you don't take, you know, this is not your responsibility. I just wanted to.
And I want to add, the most expensive plans are those with families. And so it's not so much about the needs of an individual. The most expensive plans are the ones with family.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
And if I may add one addition to what Superintendent Chavez just said, when an employee elects an insurance program for more than just the employee, whether it's the employee plus one or employee plus family, the district is picking up that same percentage of the insurance for the additional people. They're not just paying the 74.26 or whatever the board decides on the employee, and then the employee picks up 100% on the other part of the plan. That division is across the board for all members that are enrolled in the plan.
That's fascinating, thank you.
Thank you very much. I love looking at these numbers. It's very familiar to me as a nurse, like expert picking out health insurance. And this, I appreciate you taking the time to put this together for us because it, again, puts it much more into relevancy as far as what the impact is on our classrooms and our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Moving on to the FY24 projected operational salaries with benefit options that we discussed at April 20 meeting. 7426 was 114.482 million. The tier option was 110.432 million, which was a difference of about 4 million. Earlier in the presentation, I mentioned how we really took all the buffers off of those percentages and really scrubbed this budget. So the April 26th current meeting projection for the 7426 brings it to 110 million, and for the tiers 106.9 million, which is a difference of $3.1 million.
Yes, please. Board Member Noble.
Is that because of the difference between 42 and, what is it now, 38% benefits budgeting? Is this what we're seeing here?
Board Member Noble, there's a few variables that actually play into that. It is by backing off the percentage of the benefits from 42%, and it also includes running a most current snapshot of our filled to vacant positions. As Superintendent Chavez mentioned, we had over 20 individuals announce their retirement. So by having those variables come at play and by running a current snapshot of the district's filled to vacant positions also affected some of these numbers.
So what number are we budgeting on here? Are we budgeting on filled positions or the positions we need?
It includes, Board Member Noble, the positions that we need. It's vacancies and filled the positions that the district needs.
And if I can add just a little bit to that, Mr. Martinez. So as we received resignations and also retirement paperwork, and we had displaced teachers, those displaced teachers followed those vacancies into areas of need. And so when you displace a teacher because of declining enrollment, so on and so forth, then you can eliminate that vacancy. So it's filling a position and eliminating the vacancy where they were displaced from.
Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Chavez. Moving on to the FY24 budget impacts, these are the non-negotiables. So from the April 20th meeting, you'll see the total was $17.275 million, which included the CBA stipends, substitutes, NMCA risk premium, utilities increase, cash at $6.5 million, which was about 5%, and overtime. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we expect at least $1.6 million from the current fiscal year to roll over as cash. So we were able to take that off of cash, bringing the non-negotiables down to $15.675 million. The FY24 operational budget expenditures from the April 20th meeting, we had the non-negotiables at 17.275 with the salaries at the 7426 option of 114.4, the total expenditures of 16.2, and the we didn't have any of the cash rollover and cost shifting because that happened in between that meeting and today, and also the 23 vacancies filled by displaced, as Superintendent just mentioned. So we were at 148 million. Currently, with all these impacts, by taking the 1.6 million from cash on the non-negotiables and really scrubbing the budget and bringing those percentages down to no buffer, and by backing off a little over 400,000 of the total expenditures, The cash rollover was 1.6, and the cost shifting from ad valorem was 1.5 for a total of 3.1. And also those 23 vacancies filled by displaced teachers was 1.7, or not displaced teachers, vacancies filled by displaced staff, 1.756 for a total projection of 136.758 million. And this is the 7426 option. On the next slide, we'll review the tier option. So the tier option, same thing, bringing in what the April 20th projection was with all these variables. We were at 144 million. The April 26th current meeting projection is 133.658 million.
And Mr. Martinez, I just want to add again, we're waiting for that 910B5, but your projection on 910B5 has us at how much through the SEG?
It is, we'll see that in a later slide, but it's 134.8 million. So this option does balance the budget. It allows us to have a little bit more to budget in cash. And then this option, the 7426, as mentioned previously, still leaves us in a $1.9+ million deficit at the moment. At the April 20th study session, we reviewed the Board of Education budget priorities, and those were to enhance teaching and learning to further equity by Board Member Noble, staff pay, compaction, and additional instructional time, also by Board Member Noble, licensed teachers in all classroom by President Bozay, substitutes and addressing year-long substitutes by President Bozay, student recruitment, outreach, communications by Vice President Anderson, the social, emotional, mental health of staff and students by President Bozay and Board Member Noble, parent and community engagement on the South Side by Secretary Abetha, attendance by President Bozay, and summer and after-school programs to generate more revenue by President Bozay.
And at the end of the meeting, Dr. Gonzalez, if you see something that we may have missed, since you were not present during the study session, you can please let us know.
As far as your priorities? As far as your priorities for the budget?
Right, okay,
Because we
thank you.
shared those last
And you
week.
did update me on the budget the other day.
Thank you. Moving on to the FY23 and FY24 revenue comparisons. So for FY23, our operational, which was our SEG and any cash, was 128.6 million. We had special revenue of 61.8 million, capital outlay of 108 million, debt service of 99.3 million for our total operating budget of 398 million. The FY24 projected revenue, as Superintendent Chavez mentioned, we have yet to receive the 910B5 from the PED. But the projected revenue, they did provide us a tool, and I did go through that and plug in the certified data from the district, but there are times that there can be some discrepancies. But using that tool, the projected revenue for operational was 134.8 million. Special revenue is still pending. We have yet to see any allocations. That includes transportation.
And if I could just add, I was on a meeting today with PED, many of us were, and in that meeting, they announced that we would be receiving award letters at the end of the summer around CTE, school security. So again, there's 60 million, if I remember correctly, in CTE funding out there. Each 70. Sorry, thank you. I knew you worked on that one. At a minimum, each district would receive $100,000, but it's going to be based on different variables, so that number could go very high for large districts, especially someone like ours. So.
Thank you, Superintendent Chavez. And we've been in constant communication with the PED about receiving some of those allocations that are critical to continuing to move this budget forward, such as transportation and our operational. But I included the FY23 revenue to give you a picture of what our revenue was for FY23 and kind of what we're hoping and expecting to receive for FY24. The board will approve those if they are not included in the budget submission to the PED in the form of either an initial budget award, if it is a new award or allocation, or a increased budget if there is carryover or they are adding to an existing award. You might see a decreased budget bar, and that does not mean our allocation is decreasing. What it means is those expenditures occurred in the middle of the, by the end of the fiscal year. So we're on a reimbursement basis for those funds. So the deadline always lapses with those. So they don't report, the PED does not report those expenditures until after the fiscal year and the audit. So the only reason you would see a decrease is because those expenditures happen, but they didn't account for them yet in the award. So it would just be truing up the balance. Capital outlay of $94.8 million, as I mentioned at the last meeting. The only decrease really is the decrease in the bond sale amount from what the district is currently moving towards with our upcoming Go bond sale. The debt service, $90 million, for a total operating budget currently of $319.768 million. Special revenue transportation, as I mentioned, we're still waiting the allocation. I know I did talk to the PED today, and they said that they were working on that. Funded independently through NMPED using a formula that calculates the ridership and mileage. The FY24 allocation is projected to cover department expenses, including staff maintenance, fuel, and other operating costs. Also, the allocation is estimated to be at least $4.1 million to address the salary increases of 6%. So at least $4.1 million. Student nutrition projection for FY24 revenue is $4.9 million, and that is based on projected participation rates of meals served, the federal reimbursements for meals served, and does not include any prior year cash balance. The projection is favorable for maintaining current staffing levels and covering projected food and other operating costs. Capital outlay, this slide did not change from the April 20th meeting. But it includes what the FY23 budget was, or currently is, and what those expenditures are currently at, how many FTE are taken from these funds, and I will mention that HB 33 statute only allows 6% of expenditures from the prior year. That's why there are 10.7 FTE in there, and we are not allowed to put any more currently based on expenditures. And ETN also has 33 FTE in there. A lot of those are our digital learning coaches and several other staff that qualify to be in that fund. And what the FY24 budget is projected to be. That projection for FY24 includes the projection of cash from FY23 rolling to FY24. So that could change based on anything that happens in the current fiscal year, if there were to be more expenditures than what is currently reported. Debt service, as I mentioned earlier, this pays off the debt using principal and interest payments. Debt is paid out over more than a year. Those schedules, usually for ETN, we see them about a 3-year schedule, maybe 4-year. And for Go Bond, anywhere from 5 to 10 years. As I mentioned, principal is paid once a year, and interest is paid twice a year. Those other service fees, those are the paying agent fees that we are also billed for those transactions. And that debt service reserve, as mentioned, that's a restricted cash account. As I mentioned previously, it's like an escrow account. I do also want to mention that with the upcoming bond sale, we don't start paying principal and interest on it right away. Usually it's in the next fiscal year or even after. It depends on what the schedule is, but never is it right away in the next cycle. We pay in August and February. Those are the times that the principal and interest are paid. But it'll at least be a year. As Superintendent Chavez mentioned, we have the updated timeline. Our May 11th Board of Education meeting, we are hoping to present the budget for approval. That depends on receiving some allocations, specifically the SEG. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll be able to receive that. The ATC budget presentation for approval will also be at May 11th board meeting. I will review and approve it before it comes to the board for approval and make any recommendations. Last year we were able to catch some things and assist them in ensuring that the budget was in alignment with what the district does. So but May 15th through the 19th, if needed, possible special Board of Education meeting for budget approval if it's not approved or not ready for approval at the May 11th board meeting. The May 25th Board of Education meeting is scheduled, which is also the same day as the Capitol High School graduation. And the May 30th date is when the budget is due to the New Mexico Public Education Department. So superintendent, myself, any other staff will stand for any questions or comments if needed.
Mr. Martinez, could you go back to slide 17 and just a quick question on what that special state 31400 is? I noticed it's quite higher than it was in last year.
Absolutely. President Bose, that is our legislative appropriations. And I know when I first started with the district, this was high. We had so many legislative appropriations. And over the years, the district has been really, really good about working with facilities and maintenance and the technology department and really getting those projects done and fully spent and reimbursed. Currently, we don't have a lot of projects underway. There are very few. We have about 59,000 reverting, which was the backup generator for ESC. That project has been done, completed, and came in under budget, so that funding reverts back to the PED. We did see an increase. 140,000 is currently for the Ortiz water line replacement, 150,000 for ATC charter sports facility construction. It's for ATC, but it has to be filtered and done through Santa Fe Public Schools. And also 815,000 for, sorry, let me scroll down, for affordable housing construction.
And if I can just add, Mr. Martinez, this was what we asked during our legislative breakfast. And so, you know, it did increase dramatically from previous years when we were receiving just over $300,000 to now over 1.2 million. So we want to thank our legislators for joining us for that breakfast and also for this allocation.
Yeah, it's great. And Superintendent Chavez, thank you for that. And also, I did want to mention that there was something I was going to mention on it, but I forgot. Sorry, but they are our legislative appropriations, and the district has been really good. If it's construction, you have about a 4-year timeline for those funds to revert. It just really depends on what the scope of the project is, but the district has been a really good steward of moving those within max 2 years.
And something that's not on there, we received an allocation for pre-K expansion. So again, that's something that we were asked. We asked our delegation for, and again, we want to thank them.
And Mr. Martinez, just to make sure that I'm understanding how you explain that, this is money that if we don't use it reverts back to PED?
President Bose, that is correct.
Okay.
It just depends on the reversion date and on the scope.
What the
It could
project-
revert in
Okay.
2 years if you don't use it, 4 years if you don't use it.
Okay, thank you.
And I was going to say that those are contingent based on the bond questionnaires by the NMPED, which we're working on. They have to fall within the scope and alignment, and the district basically just certifies that they're doing that before it's awarded, and that the district is the fiduciary, but also will maintain and keep those assets and account for those assets. So it's a process that we go through because they're specific to Santa Fe Public Schools. I don't see any of these not being funded or awarded.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Martinez, we also I wanted to add that House Bill 505, the one for career tech ed facilities, also can be included for pre-K expansion of our facilities.
Any other questions? Yes, Secretary Abeyta.
Thank you, President Bose. I appreciate the looking at benefits again. I didn't realize that you were budgeting at 42%. In my experience with both city, county governments, 33 to 35% was more than norm. So I can see where there's savings there going down to 38%. The other thing is I also appreciate that you looked at department expenditures again. A lot of times departments don't like to do that because that's where sometimes you want to save and hold on to as much money as you can. And the fact that you did that and came up with $400,000 is really good. As far as board priorities, I would like to add a board priority if it's appropriate. I would add that I would like to see an analysis of district properties and options for the board to consider, such as development or disposal, to address budget shortfalls and increase cash reserves over the long term. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Board Secretary Abeyta. Just to piggyback off your comment about the benefits. So we did speak to NIMSIA and also PED. NIMSIA is saying about 35%, a safe number is 38, and so that was, again, the number we used. We also thought 38% was a safe number because of the 74-26 split that the district carries. So again, there could be some wiggle room there, but again, I think this is a more accurate number and projection.
And Secretary Abeyta, if I may, I also previously worked in local government in those entities, and I do know their insurance plans are different, and that's probably why their percentages are a little bit lower, because this is through NIMSIA and local government is not. So there is just that slight discrepancy in those percentages. But as I mentioned, by reverting down to this tight percentage, this is really a tight budget of what we're submitting. So Superintendent Chavez not mentioned, that's more of an accurate number for this entity.
Yes, Board Member Noble.
If I may, on that point, I guess my question is it an accurate number? I mean, 38 still seems a little high to me based on, and I understand the differences, but across governments, across private industry, across, and I'm guessing we have some history on this that we could know about. So tell me more about 38%, because they're big savings here.
I was talking without my microphone on. You're absolutely correct, Board Member Noble. And so as we continue to scrub that and make sure, I think the other thing to note, and this is something we discussed today and we need to have more conversations with PED, we identified that we have 1,050 employees participating in benefits. We employ 2,100. So that's a 50% rate of employees going into our benefit packages. So again, there is some possibility. I want to dig deeper into the way PED is funding us, especially around the 80-67 or 80-70-60, because there could be some wiggle room in there. We could be receiving additional funding to offset our cost, which lowers that 38 to maybe 37 or 36. And what we've found is for every 1% is about $800,000 to $900,000 in savings.
And Board Member Noble, that is a really good point. And what I did do in working out these new numbers was I went through the financial history of the district, and I looked at what the salaries were compared to the breakdown of each element of benefits from ERB, which we know ERB is increasing 1%, and also looking at the medical, the FICA, those other elements that are required to be taken out. And I looked at the percentage to see if 38% was more in alignment of the financial history, and it was.
Yes, please, continue.
And I don't doubt it's more in alignment. I'm just wondering how much more in alignment we could get, I suppose. And are we budgeting on the whole population or the 50% that take up benefits?
Board Member Noble, this is off the 50% that take up benefits.
Okay, thank you. I can keep going. I have a couple other.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so let's see. That was what I really appreciate this benefits math. We've talked about this every year in budgeting, and it's never been this clear. So thank you very, very much. I really do actually understand what's happening at different levels now. And even the math about the days. And I appreciate Vice President Anderson's questions there, because that is very helpful. And it sounds like there's a few extra minutes sneaking in on the days, but that it is really 2 days more. So, okay. What is in, let's see, there's my 38%. Oh, I would like to understand more about this cost shifting and this 3.1. I think I understand the cash rollover piece, but what's the cost shifting? piece. I'm on page 12.
Board Member Noble, whoa, okay. Board
And
Member
I know
Noble.
the cost shifting was
Sorry.
brought up before this page, but this is where the math starts to add up.
So there's an ad valorem tax allocation that the district received in initial budget in the beginning of
What
this.
does that mean?
It used to be built into the SEG
Okay.
in prior years, and now it's in the form of a separate allocation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just your ad valorem taxes. It was like a driver and incentive of the SEG, so it was filtered through SEG in prior years. For FY23 and moving forward, it's a separate allocation. And that is specific. You're allowed to move a very small percentage over to operational if the PED allows, but it is for salaries and benefits. That's what it was set up for instructional staff.
Is this the first year?
This
we're
is the
getting
first
this
year.
Separate allocation? How much is it?
1.5 million. So it's the 1.6 million cash rollover and the 1.5 cost shifting for the total of 3.1.
Got it.
Those
Okay.
cost shifts are going to take place in this fiscal year as well.
And so we're using that funding for what it's intended for, it's just coming in a different way
That's correct.
at this stage.
It's
Okay.
coming in the form of a separate allocation.
Do we have any pre-K slots in our revenue and thinking about that? Where does pre-K fit in this budget?
And thank you, Board Member Noble. We're almost at the end of the night, and I haven't messed up yet with the names and titles. So they are. It goes back into the explanation of membership versus FTE. So it's rolled into the SEG in, I guess, 0.5 rather than 1-for-1. So membership for pre-K students are a 0.5 per individual that's rolled into the SEG. So it's rolled into the SEG, and that's where our funding comes from. And if I'm not correct, because I see the face, is that correct, Robert?
Superintendent Chavez, that is correct. It has on the 910B5, which is our SEG funding tool, it separates out the pre-K as well, and those units are at a 0.5, not at a 1-to-1.
There's something not right here, just because pre-K's a slot-funded system. And so I don't doubt that it could be there in the worksheet, in the math, but it's not strictly funded as a 0.5 portion of an SEG unit, I really don't think.
So part of it is, when we submit our application for pre-K, we identify the number of slots. And so those number of slots are counted towards the FTE. And it's based off of the funding and the application. So the way we receive the funding is through the SEG and not a separate allocation. Maybe
Okay.
a little better?
I understand how we receive it. I'm not quite clear on the math, given that, and I think this year, and I'm guessing it would take a little bit more digging, but this year, depending on the offerings, there are different levels of pre-K funding per slot, the highest being at the extended plus level, which is more than 1,300 instructional or hours in pre-K. And so how that all, and I don't doubt that the PED has a means or is working on a means to embed the slots into the worksheet, because I cannot remember those letters and numbers and say it, even though we're doing it, 910B5, we're doing it a lot these days. Anyway, just, I don't know if that's all there, because 0.5, I don't think adds up to what I understand the slot allocation for pre-K to be, which does depend on 3 different levels of pre-K funding, potentially, and what we opt into,
Yep.
which I'd imagine still also needs to be worked on, because it's all happened, of course, since the close of the legislative session.
Yeah, and we're still working on that calendar. We'll bring back that answer for you.
Okay.
Don't want to give you any misinformation moving forward, but yeah, you're absolutely right. The extension of the pre-K hours, I actually have a meeting Friday morning with our pre-K teachers just to inform them of what's coming down the pipe. So it's a big change.
Thank you very much. We've been through that growing up in New Mexico. Still working on it. Okay, we looked at something somewhere. It doesn't really matter. My question is, what's in ARPA that we're going to, this is our last year of? What do we need to move out of ARPA after FY24?
Yeah, and we'll make sure that that's included in the next presentation. But stuff that's in ARPA, and we've started to transition out, especially FTEs, such as our work-based learning coordinator. So if you remember, that's how we started the program. We've moved that position out. We've moved a few others that we started in there that we created room for. But ARPA is, the work-based learning coordinators moved out. Our work-based learning program in general was in there. The way we started childcare was in there. We're continuing now that we're licensed, exploring more options to continue that funding. Standards-based teaching and learning was funded out of ARPA, and so that's going to come to a conclusion at the end. I think we've invested 3+ years in it, and I think we're in a good place where we've built internal mechanisms and also the capacity within each within each school in our district to continue with that programming. Can you think of anything else off the top of your head?
Superintendent Chavez, the only thing that I can think of is that the district is also looking at any increases in awards and special revenue to be able to shift those before, or to shift those potentially further on to where the impact will not be on the operational budget or be as significant to the operational budget.
And one big one I forgot to mention, because we're almost rolling right into it, summer programming. So summer programming is currently funded out of ARPA. Now, we've met with PED. They have a $20 million allocation. So we're filling out the application so we can continue to offer summer programming for all of our students at no cost. So that's work in progress. We're hoping to access that type of funding, and hopefully it grows. $20 million over the entire state is not a lot. So if Board Member Gonzalez is listening, maybe she can help us advocate for more money in that area.
Well, and I guess I'd say that's part of the point, is that, if we have people in ARPA, that's pretty important, and it sounds like you're already looking at, and if we are looking for special revenue replacements, that's great to hear. But ultimately, this is a preview to our legislative priorities in terms of looking for that summer funding to increase, looking for some of these other things. And, the full story is the proof of concept that we can unpack in terms of what we've done with stimulus money in order to ask our legislature to make up some of those gaps.
Absolutely correct. Another one that just came to mind are attendance coaches, 5 of them. Okay. And we've made a positive impact there. We thought we had a piece of legislation that we worked on to attach funding to the Attendance for Success Act. It stalled, I think, on the House side. But that's something, again, that we need to pick up and move forward, because they've made an impact. They make an impact on learning. And so, again, we need to make sure that we can continue with those attendance coaches district-wide.
Yes, Dr. Gonzalez.
I just wanted to mention that next year is a budget year and it's a 30-day session. So really, it's important to get all of our budget requests in. And it's been helpful that I'm on the school board with Senator Stewart, because I actually know stuff that I didn't know before, that I could tell her, like the 6% didn't cover everything, and so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I've spoke with the LESC, and they've asked me, what is it going to take to replace the federal stimulus? And so, we're working together. But you hit the nail on the head, Board Member Noble. We have to show results. We have to see that what we're investing in is making progress. I think everything that we have so far, even by the U.S. Department of Ed, is on track. And so, again, I think you hit the nail on the head. We have to see results from the investments from ARPA.
And just to follow up on what Dr. Gonzalez said, I think that's part of the benefit of building such good relationships with our local delegation, is to really help them understand, just as folks who don't sit on the school board can't understand all of the numbers here, they don't necessarily understand the impact of all of their legislation. And so the more that we can keep that conversation open and say, hey, did you realize this? Oftentimes they do not. So we have to keep open communication. I think that's really valuable and important.
And just to say, I think, Superintendent, what you point to is working with some of the interim committees. I mean, honestly, it'd be great, to Dr. Gonzalez's point as well, like, to have this sort of narrative and numbers reasonably clear in the fall to work with the interim committees, because the short session is so short. It's not like we can suddenly move everything in January. Exactly. So working with the interim committees. And just a couple of comments, I guess, and I think that's all I have. But ultimately, as Mr. Martinez detailed, we do see the changes. We have to adopt the budget, and I'm looking at page 14, which is the sort of more complete picture of the operational and the operating budget. We have to do it by May 30th. I'm pretty sure it has to be balanced, correct?
Board Member Noble, that is correct, and there's a very lengthy process that goes into even submitting and compiling and uploading the budget.
Sure. There's lots of work that has to be done before you can hit some big red submit button or something. I'm sure. Okay. And, as Mr. Martinez detailed, we do see changes to the budget in an increase and decrease in bars. As we heard from Ms. Jaramillo, and we've heard at the audit committee, there is this concern about our cash position. This does propose some improvements to that. Most of all, I'm actually less concerned about us making sure we have a super healthy cash balance. I like to keep the money as close to the students as possible in the classrooms. I think we are still making not just board member learning loss, but all sorts of learning loss. And frankly, education remains somewhat underfunded because this is hard work and there's a lot to it, and it is the foundation of society or democracy. Yes, bedrock stuff. So ultimately, how we see our budget and evolving picture through the increase and decrease of bars as the year goes on is sort of an open question that I would love us to get better at and see where we are there. The other thing is just to say, on the board priorities, I'm a little uncomfortable at how we've done this. We've often worked in the past to build some consensus around board priorities, and it's an okay list, but just to say that, and we've said stuff out loud, and we can do that, but how that works is still a little bit of an open question for me. And I happen to really like Secretary Abeta's priority and request that he said. However, I also think that that's the kind of thing that maybe we should unpack a little bit and make sure that at least 3 of us are into the full analysis, because it could be a bunch of work. I happen to not think it'll be a problem, and like I say, I think it's a good idea, but really understanding, Superintendent, from your perspective and the team perspective as to what that would be, just a little bit of sort of thought and analysis around what, and it was beautifully said, Secretary Abeta, but as I understood it, it was an analysis of properties to see what opportunities there might be to use our assets in better ways, loosely. I think I'm paraphrasing badly, but anyway, so just to say, that's something I would suggest as a little bit of a process that we put on a future agenda in order for there to be a little flesh on what that means, and make sure we understand the intent. And I don't think it was an exhaustive property audit or something that Secretary Abeyta was proposing, but I would like to understand a little more of exactly what we're talking about with that sort of thing. That's all I have. Thank you.
Board Member Noble, if I can make a comment about your first comment about the cash position. I do appreciate the acknowledgement of the superintendent, the board, the audit committee, our auditors, about it being a priority and getting to the percentage of the board priority in statute, which is why it was built in as a non-negotiable. It's very easy to utilize cash and draw it down, but it's really tough to build it back up. And you see the impact that it has to revenue when you're trying to build that cash back up. So I do appreciate how the district is handling the cash position, and it is very serious to us. The district has made leaps and bounds as far as its audit, and I think this is the last thing to really clean up and for the district to be in tip-top shape. So I'm excited to see that and to continue that in the budget for the district, just to continue that growth and that progress and to get back on track.
Well, and again, just to add, I agree. I appreciate it too. On the other hand, in my time, which is 6 years, there has been a cash sweep. Yeah. So it's, and we've discussed it ad nauseum in the audit committee, and you know, it feels right now, even 6 years ago, like the distant future or the distant past, and not something that could happen again in the future. But I guess I'm still a little scarred from when $2 million disappeared from this district's bank account because the state swept the cash. And there were other districts who lost more money because they were sitting on bigger amounts of cash, and that really was not a service to the students and work of their public school districts. So, you know, it's always a balance, and you know, right now we do need to get our reserves back to in line with the board policy. I'm not sure it's statute, but it's also just that sort of, I always feel pulled in one direction and then the other, and that cash sweep really did hurt.
Well, it's still being talked about 6 years later.
Incredibly relevant and a fine line to walk. Yes, Dr. Gonzalez.
President Bozay, I just have a question about the student nutrition. From what I understand, all students are going to get free meals, and where are we getting the funding for all that? Is that being provided by the state,
Well, and that's something we're still working through. When we're at the bill signing, I was still talking to those in PED that oversee student nutrition. There was not a lot of clarity that was provided, but again, we're still in conversations. What I can say is we still have to have students and families fill out those applications. It's still based on a reimbursable rate. Students can only have one breakfast and one lunch item. If they go back for a second, it's not covered by the bill, so they would have to pay, or we'd have to cover the cost of it. But again, we're still researching how all the funding is going to work. Does it include salaries? Does it include increase, you know, of 6%? What does that look like? Because a lot of times we have covered, the district has covered the increase to salaries because the federal funding does not do it.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
Thank you so much, President Bozay, Superintendent and members of the board. Oh, I lost what page I was on. I just had a question about the bilingual program units. If we convert programs from bilingual programs to heritage language programs, do we still get bilingual program units for those, or does that change our allocations?
Vice President Anderson, will you repeat your question?
Yeah,
Sorry.
so we had talked about in I think our last meeting and maybe a couple of other meetings, how some schools are changing from a bilingual or maybe it's just from a dual language model to a heritage model. And I didn't know if our heritage programs also got the bilingual program unit. Sorry, it might be a question for deputy superintendent, sorry. They do, they still get the bilingual program. Okay, cool, that's awesome. That's it.
That's it. All right. Well, I'm going to go back to the health insurance premium impacts. And I am really pleased about the direction that the budget is moving. It feels important to me. I don't know how the rest of the board feels to try to stay at a 74.26. That means that the increase to the employees is covered by that 1%, and it won't make them bring home less money on their paychecks. And I think economic times are difficult right now, and we've worked really, really hard to recruit and retain teachers, and don't think this is a good time for them to have less money in their paychecks. Yes.
On that, President Bozé, superintendent, members of the board, this might be too much work, so just tell me if it is. But what does it look like if we cover 70-30 for the people that we're only required to cover 60-40 for? Does that put us at a deficit, or can we balance the budget that way?
We can take a look at that. I mean, we'll
Okay.
have 2 weeks to work on balancing the budget, bringing some more options forward. But I do want to just reiterate what President Bozé said, is that 1%, the only way to cover the increased cost to employee benefits with that 1% is that 74-26 split.
Yeah.
Maybe 73-27.
Okay.
But that 1% will not cover the increase when you go to a tiered system.
Okay.
But we can work on your request.
Okay, thank you.
I think so, right, Mr. Exner?
Sorry. This looks great, by the way. This is really fantastic, and I'm so sorry to give you more work.
Madam President, Vice President Anderson, we could certainly take a look at that. I think what I hear you asking is 70-30 for the employees making above 50,000, 80-20 for the people below 50,000. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah, we could do that, figure out the cost of it.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you all for the work. It's, we're moving along.
Thank you.
All right. Action items. First is the consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like to consider separately?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Oops, sorry. We all went to second.
Thank you. Just quickly, before we take our vote, I wanted to point out on that contracts for board approval, at our last CRC meeting, we did talk about outdoor classrooms, and you'll see architects on that contracts, as there are 3 SFPS sites that are getting next level outdoor classrooms, and the drawings are really cool and exciting. And again, these were kind of school-driven visions and plans, not the district mandating what they had to have. So yay for that. I think it's super cool. And lots of other important building projects on there. So with that said, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have passed the consent agenda. And next, we have the acceptance of the school year 2023-2024 calendar.
Thank you, Board President Bozé, members of the board. Taking us through this evening's item is our Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Deputy Superintendent Romero.
Thank you, President Bozé, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. I believe in your packet, you have the tentative school calendar for 23-24, and we are here for your acceptance of the calendar. With the increase in instructional minutes to 1140 for all kids in kindergarten through 12th grade, we made adjustments by adding a couple of days and adjusting the start and end times for our kids. But with that, it looks pretty typical to the calendar that we currently have this year as far as the start dates, the end dates, holidays, and the release and the start and end times for the school day. If you look at the bottom of the calendar, it has the start and end times for elementary, middle school, our K-8s, and our high schools. And so this calendar reflects the instructional minutes and the professional development that was mandated by the state. I did want to mention previously, in previous years, we've always had, we were able to count parent-teacher conferences towards instructional minutes. This new mandate says that we can no longer incorporate parent-teacher conferences towards instructional minutes. So one of the adjustments we made this school year, we've given kindergarten through 12th grade 2 parent-teacher conferences in the fall, and then like late January. We shifted that. So we still believe that our elementary students deserve 2 days of parent-teacher conferences because we think it's so important for teachers to be meeting with every single student to get to know their families and just provide feedback. So we're keeping that for elementary. We're pushing back to just 1 parent-teacher conference day for our secondary students. And then we also made an adjustment in January for parent-teacher conferences. We're giving 1 parent-teacher conference, kindergarten through 12th grade. And typically in elementary, that's the time where we meet with students possibly that are struggling. So elementary teachers don't, we need all the time we can with our parents, but we're keeping that to 1 day instead of the 2 in January for elementary.
And Deputy Superintendent,
Oh,
if
and
you can,
Sure.
mention that we have included 1 new holiday. That was something that we heard from student board members, our board, community members.
We did. We incorporated a holiday in September for our Jewish community, and we're calling it autumnal holiday for that community. And so we listened to our parents and we listened to the union, and so we did incorporate a new holiday. I also want to add, we also incorporated social emotional learning days into the calendar, and I know there's been lots of questions around what that is and what it looks like, and I believe in your packet, we created a 1-pager just kind of describing what that is. You'll see that it talks about how daily and over the past few years we incorporate wellness check-ins, we have curriculum. Second step, we have restorative justice personnel and circles. But following the example of Capitol High School, and we just spoke to the New Mexican this morning, Capitol High had an SEL day. And it was very inspiring because they incorporated team building and they brought in guest speakers and they had a DJ, and we thought, why can't we do the same for all of our kids? So we've added 4 days, 1 per quarter, to focus solely on the wellness and mental health of our kids, taking a step back from academics because we realize that the whole child and making sure kids' mental health is a priority and making that a focus for the district. So you'll see that I think it's light blue per
And
quarter.
what I want
those
to
days
add
are added.
on that, and I'm sure Margaret heard during the interview, but the teachers loved it. Sometimes we talk about SEL for students, but the teacher said we would love more of these. This helped us create relationships and bonds and break down those barriers to help us do our job better in the classroom.
And some of the activities that were included were just team building activities, self-reflection, like journal writing. At Capitol High, teachers had the option of what they wanted to do in their classroom. And at the beginning of next school year at our Leadership Institute with principals, we plan on giving workshops to principals to kind of demonstrate and show things that they can incorporate into these SEL days at the start of the year.
And just to add, the development of this calendar, of course, all decisions, especially in a large community, are not going to be accepted by all. However, part of board policy is to put together a calendar committee, which comprises of educators, parents, and community members, union staff, which we did. And so they were part of the development of the school calendar.
Well, thank you very much for working on inclusion and social emotional well-being and all of that good team building, culture building. That's all really incredibly important. I also want to, as a parent of 2 students who attend a K-8, express appreciation for making that early release day on the same day. That was really stressful for a lot of families this past year. So again, appreciate the responsiveness and the continual improvement that the district does.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. My 6th grader actually told me this morning that she's working on a project in one of her classes, and they picked emotional well-being as their topic, and the 3 of them are, in her group, are working on different aspects of things that impact emotional well-being. And so I told her this morning about social emotional days, and I said, you should tell your teacher that you want to work on this more over the summer and present to your school next year. Like, this is a really great opportunity for, in her case, it's a middle school kiddo. So I think it's really great that our students are thinking about that. There's this awareness. They work closely with the WAVE team at El Dorado. So I think it's a serious need, and the more that we can all work on it and bring awareness, the better the outcomes will be.
Thank you. Are there questions? Any other questions?
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
I just wanted to make a comment. I think it's a great calendar. I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I know more than normal with the increased instructional hours, so I really appreciate that. I love that we're giving our students who observe Yom Kippur those days off, because that's such an important holiday. I really like how you've rolled the vernal holiday in with spring break. I think that works really well instead of having the breakup. I know we can't decide when the vernal holiday is going to be exactly.
Right. It was
shifts every year.
convenient, yeah.
But I like that together, and I love the social emotional learning days. I know my kids are going to be so excited about those. So thank you so much. This is great.
I do want to add one comment. Next year, remind me, is a leap year. So we did pick up a day.
That helped us.
Automatically.
Well, then a year from now, we're going to have to find a day. So,
Any other questions? And if not, could I have a motion to approve the new calendar?
I move approval of the calendar.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the calendar, please say aye.
Just to,
Aye.
we accept it, right? We don't
Sorry,
approve it.
accept.
Sorry to be pedantic, but,
It's relevant.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the new calendar, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you again very much. I think we're all the way through our action items and on to board discussion and possible action. Reimagining is up there. Do you have anything to share with us from last week?
I think I've seen a few of you sharing on Facebook the additional focus groups that have been scheduled, which is great. Also, a retreat for the steering committee has been scheduled for May 31st. That will be 10 to 4, so more coming on that. I believe, Superintendent, can you confirm the May reimagining meeting was going to be canceled in favor of the retreat?
correct, and also because of graduation.
Right.
Yep.
So we will not have a third Thursday meeting in May. We will have a retreat on May 31st. And again, sort of still on track to come forward with policies for the board to consider. Hopefully, the first one will come in May or June in the next couple months.
Very exciting.
And if I can just add on that, yesterday was district staff to include principals. So we have a monthly meeting with the Principals Association, which we canceled because they asked us we would like to participate in this focus group, and we said absolutely. So we canceled the Principals Association so they could participate. I heard from Dr. Garcia this morning. A lot of great thoughts, ideas. Our principals and district staff participated and really enjoyed that focus group. So again, we're continuing to, it's very fluid. It's not that we're going to sit on one item. It sounds like more ideas and thoughts are just being shared. So it's been a great process, and a lot of great information has come forward, and I think we're going to have a lot of great things to chew on.
Yes. And I think tonight was the staff focus group, and then tomorrow night is parents, so, or families. I'm glad that our meeting is tonight. I can actually participate tomorrow night. And hopefully lots and lots of other families will also participate. We want to hear your big ideas.
And that's, I was going to say the point. Thank you, President Bose. We've really reached and it's been out there, what is your big idea? And I think maybe the conversation has finally ripened, because it does seem like a lot more good, big ideas are coming forward. And sometimes for a lot of us, it takes a little while to process, like, what does this even mean, and for it to sink in. So I'm really hopeful, as the superintendent says, there's a lot of good stuff that's coming forward, and really want to encourage people to continue to engage and send in ideas and use this opportunity, because the more good ideas we get, the better we will do at the end of all of this.
100%. Yes, Vice President Anderson.
Thank you so much, President Bose, Superintendent, and members of the board. I was lucky enough to get to attend a couple of focus groups last week. One was the in-person for, I think, anybody. It was, district staff, and there were some students and parents. And then I also attended a focus group specifically for Indigenous parents and staff members, and they were both really fantastic. Lots of support for dual language programs, keeping language acquisition going through middle and high school, just like a lot of really great ideas about bolstering neighborhood schools and, things that have been percolating, I think, for a long time, but were really coming to the forefront. And then I really appreciated the feedback from Indigenous parents about recruiting Indigenous teachers. We, of course, passed the staffing resolution that included specifically recruiting Indigenous teachers. And we discussed a lot about, what's hard about that, what it's like creating an environment where an Indigenous teacher feels comfortable. Where do we recruit from? My alma mater, the University of Oklahoma, from Haskell and Kansas, from South Dakota, lots of really great ideas about how to bring more Indigenous folks into our community. And when talking about magnets that might be focused on Indigenous culture, and just really incredible things that you get when you get a bunch of Native folks in a room together, which I always highly recommend. Great time. So it was really great to be able to attend the focus groups, and I would urge folks to lean into those. The only thing that could have been better would be if there were more people there.
Anything else for board discussion and possible action? All right. Advanced planning. I think we all know that we'll be back here on May 11th, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow. Also that day, we will have an audit committee meeting, and that is the meeting where the board members are invited to attend to talk about our committees and how they interact with the board. Is that meeting going to be in person? Or virtually?
We haven't done them in person in a long
Okay.
time, so.
Okay. So that'll be a virtual meeting, and anyone who is able to attend from the board is invited and welcome to be there. That is also the night we have our 5:15 special meeting for the GO bond and ETN. So if we don't have an executive session that evening, please make sure you're here at 5:15. Your invitations will reflect that. I assume we don't know yet if we need executive session. Okay, so just keep an eye out on your invitations, please, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for being here.